Alright, peace, y'all. So, in case you haven't heard of the 4 Idaho students that were brutally murdered by Brian Kohlberger, this was a satanic ritual in itself. I'm going to be explaining to you guys exactly what took place and how this all leads to Hollywood and is being swept under the rug quietly. In the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, 4 University of Idaho college students were stabbed to death in a shared rental home close to campus in which 3 of them resided. The 3 female victims, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, and Zana Knodel, they lived at the house, while the 4th victim, Ethan Chapin, was Knodel's boyfriend who was sleeping over on the night of the attacks. 2 other female roommates also lived at the house. They were not attacked. Earlier on the evening of November 12th, 2 of the 4 victims, Chapin and Knodel, who were dating at the time, were at an on-campus party at the nearby Sigma Chi fraternity from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. They returned home at 1:45 a.m. That evening, the other 2 victims' best friends, Mogen and Goncalves, had gone to the Corner Club, a downtown sports bar, at 10 p.m., from which they departed at 1:30 a.m. A live stream video on Twitch by the Grub Truck, a food truck 4 blocks south at Friendship Square, showed Mogen and Goncalves at 1:41 a.m. chatting and smiling, getting their food 10 minutes later, and leaving to take what the police initially said was an Uber ride home. A trip of about 1 mile. The police later rephrased their statement to say the ride was provided by a private party, arriving home at 1:56 a.m. The 2 surviving roommates, Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen, had returned home by 1 a.m., and the original report said that they were in their beds on the ground floor of the home at the time of the killings. They were not attacked or held hostage. An original report stated that both surviving roommates did not awaken during the killings. However, the affidavit for the case said that one surviving roommate was sleeping on the 2nd floor, the same floor as Knodel and Chapin. Before she was awoken by what sounded like Goncalves and her dog, she later heard a roommate saying something to the effect of, "There's someone here." The roommate believed this was said by Goncalves, although investigators also believe this might have been Knodel speaking, as a forensic download of her cell phone showed that she was on the app TikTok at 4:12 a.m. The surviving roommate, Dylan Mortensen, opened her door twice within a short span of time, and on the 2nd time she heard what sounded like crying coming from Knodel's room and a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Security cameras near the home picked up the sound of whimpering, a loud thud, and a dog barking numerous times starting around 4:17 a.m. The surviving roommate, Dylan Mortensen, opened her door a 3rd time and saw a figure clad in a black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. The man, who Dylan Mortensen did not recognize, walked past her and used the sliding glass door to exit. It is unknown if the man saw her. Dylan Mortensen stood in a frozen shock phase and then locked herself in the room. The 4 victims were stabbed to death on the 2nd and 3rd floors in the home where they had been in bed. The victims were not gagged or restrained, and all of the walls at the scene were splattered with blood. Mogen and Goncalves were found in Mogen's bedroom, and Knodel and Chapin were found in Knodel's room. No calls to 911 were made until the next day at 11:58 a.m., many hours after the early morning killings. At that time, a call was made from inside the residence, from the cell phone of one of the surviving students who had lived at the residence, asking for aid for an unconscious person. When police arrived, the door to the home was open. There was no sign of forced entry or damage inside the home, and nothing appeared to be missing. The 2 surviving roommates were in the residence when the police arrived, as were other friends of the victims. The surviving roommates had called friends over to the home because they believed one of the 2nd floor victims was unconscious and was not waking up. The identity of the 911 caller was not released, and the person was not considered a suspect in the crime. Kaylee Goncalves, 21, of Ratham, Idaho, was a general studies major at University of Idaho, the middle child of 5 siblings, and was always up for a challenge, says her father. Longtime best friend Maddie Mogan and Kaylee Goncalves met in the 6th grade. The college housemates were inseparable and died side by side. Madison Mogan, 21, of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, was a senior at the university majoring in marketing. She had a talent for making people laugh, says her boyfriend. Zana Kanoto, 20, a junior majoring in marketing from Post Falls, Idaho, was known for being focused on her studies. Zana Kanoto and Ethan Chapin began dating in the spring of 2022. Ethan Chapin, 20, of Mount Vernon, Washington, was majoring in recreation and tourism management, a triplet. Ethan attended the University of Idaho with his sister and brother. Here's a picture of Kaylee Goncalves and her father, Steve. A flyer asked the public for information as police investigate the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students in Moscow. The Latah County coroner conducted autopsies on the 4 victims on November 17th. She said they all appeared to have been stabbed multiple times, with fatal wounds in the chest and upper body, with a large knife, if not the same knife, a very similar one. At least one victim with what were apparently defensive stab wounds on her hands and possibly more appear to have tried to fend off the attacker, and the other victims may have been attacked while sleeping in their beds. None showed signs of sexual assault. All 4 deaths were deemed homicide by stabbing. Police also added that the victims were not tied or gagged. No weapon has been recovered, although the police believe the killer or killers used a fixed blade knife. The police initially left open the possibility that there could be more than one perpetrator. The police also stated that they believed it was a targeted attack, but have not concluded if the target was the residents or its occupants. In the November 23rd press conference, the Moscow police chief said that the authorities had received a number of tips, including that Goncalves had allegedly had a stalker, but were unable to verify that claim or identify any such individuals at the time. Here's a picture of Brian Kohlberger, the alleged suspect who did the crime. Friends say in high school Kohlberger was overweight and was bullied, but that changed when in senior year Kohlberger lost 100 pounds and a lot of people noticed a huge switch in him, said Casey Antz. A friend of Brian Kohlberger by the name of Bree says she met Brian Kohlberger in high school, where he was an average student with only a few close friends. She says Brian was really funny. He wasn't outgoing at all, but he also wasn't shy. At the time of his arrest, Kohlberger was listed as a PhD criminology student and teaching assistant at Washington State University's Pullman campus, which is a short drive from Moscow, Idaho. Arrest paperwork filed by Pennsylvania State Police in Monroe County Court Friday, December 30th, 2022 said Kohlberger, 28, was being held for extradition in a criminal homicide investigation in the killing of 4 University of Idaho students. Here's a message from Brian Kohlberger on an old chat forum from September 23rd, 2010. He says, "I can't remember anything recent or anything from childhood. I used to be able to remember everything from my childhood and everything every day for a month before me. Now I'm just a blank soul living in the now. What hurts the most is knowing that every time I try to remember things from the past, I can't, and my mind is so hung up with versus all the migraines, versus effects mentally, the buzzing in my ear, that I can't even focus on that. I got it September 21st of last year, and ever since then I have been depressed. I can't remember anything at all, and I always have this horrible pressure in my head. My mind is never not on visual snow, and I always wonder what a normal person would be doing while I sit there and suffer. This whole thing has made me crazy. I feel like my life is pointless because people can't think about the times with parents, childhood memories, and be happy, and I won't be able to." Now what this sounds like to me is that he may have been programmed during his time in the military for some sort of MK Ultra, but I want you guys to pay very close attention to the date, 2010. It's going to get very interesting. Bryan Kohberger also complained about the buzzing and ringing in his ears and said it felt like demons were mocking him in his head. Police released new body cam video of Bryan Kohberger and his father being pulled over twice in Indiana on a December road trip home to Pennsylvania. The video was taken more than 2 weeks before Kohberger's arrest. Now I find this to be very strange, being that the police suspected Bryan Kohberger to be the suspect. He was allowed to escape twice. The FBI also said he vanished for hours while under surveillance in the Idaho murder case. The FBI also denies claims they lost Bryan Kohberger. When Bryan Kohberger returned back home to Pennsylvania, he had asked his neighbor if he heard about a gruesome Idaho murder that took place weeks before he was arrested, and he called it a crime of passion that the police had no leads on. Interesting enough, here's a picture of Bryan Kohberger's sister, Amanda Kohberger, who has a single movie credit, and the movie was called 2 Days Back, shot in 2011. The premise of the movie, a group of students who were vicious stabbed to death with knives and other weapons. It is also noted that Bryan Kohberger actually followed the 3 females that were slain in the Idaho murders on Instagram. Police also retrieved Bryan Kohberger's Instagram and noticed he kept pestering one of the victims with more DMs when he didn't get a reply. A mother of a student at Washington State University said that Bryan Kohberger was not alone and there were 3 people there also. Police officers have been criticized for describing the killings as targeted while refusing to release information to explain why. Interesting enough, Bryan Kohberger's defense team hires an expert who investigated Tupac Shakur's death. Here's a photo of Bryan Kohberger in court with scratches on his face. Sheriffs claim that the scratches came from a bad shave. Now apparently it was Dylan Mortensen who actually saw Bryan Kohberger hold one of her roommates in captivity, but she didn't show up to court. Also, attorneys argued that victims' family could potentially be witnesses. The killings have unsettled the campus community in the town of about 25,000, which has not seen a murder since 2015. Now with that conclusion, why did the police let Bryan escape twice? Also, why was the movie Amanda Kohberger was in the same scenario as the Utah slayings? Also, was Bryan programmed by the CIA, or was this a satanic sacrifice? Let me know in the comments. Peace.